Hey everyone, welcome to another Top 10 list. This week's Top 10 list comes from a few requests I've had over the last few weeks, so I figured, okay, instead of answering questions individually, I'd turn it into a Top 10 list, hoping to give all of that information not only to those people asking, but to everybody. So this week's Top 10 list are the top 10 facts about web notes. I have a couple web press notes here, web notes, web fed press notes, however you want to call them. At a glance, I'll show you this little tiny number there. I'll get more into it there, but yeah, this is my stack of webbies, and you can see they all have a tiny little number there. Yeah, so you know those are my web notes. Now, I did not find all these in circulation. For the most part, I bought these off of eBay. There was somebody selling all of these in bulk, so I picked them up because I am not finding very many in circulation anymore. All right, so I've been getting questions. I got questions from Lady Kid Nichols a few weeks ago, and Bob S. just sent me some questions. So I figured what better way to do it? I'm going to do a top 10 featuring web notes. So away we go. Number 10, the first thing you want to know about a web note is, what is a web note? How is it made? What is it that's different? And the answer to that is, normally when notes are printed, they will print a sheet and they will continue to repeat sheets. And the sheet is divided up into sections, and each section you can identify on a bill exactly what section it came from. But on a web note, the reason it's called a web note is they used what's called a web-fed press. Now, if you probably have seen a web-fed press in the past and just never thought of it that way. A web-fed press is essentially the same type of press that's used for printing newspaper. Now, that is what makes a web note different, because instead of having individual sheets of paper and a location of a bill on that sheet, a web-fed press uses large rolls of paper. So since it's one large continuous roll of paper, there is no location for the bills. Now, the other thing with a web-fed press was they were trying to print them faster to see if they can still be as efficient and as neat. So that's why it's known as an experimental note. So that's number 10. How is it printed and what is it? Number 9. Now, number 9 when it comes to web notes is the actual quality. Because they were done at such a high speed compared to the standard way, which is called intaglio printing. Intaglio printing actually forces the ink into the paper. And I know I'm calling it paper. It's actually a blend of linen and cotton, so it's not really paper. But anyway, intaglio printing, the way they print our normal currency, is literally embedding the ink into the paper, whereas a web-fed press is printing on the paper, which means that on web notes, the images aren't quite as sharp as they would be on normal notes. Now, if you were to get a normal note that is pristine and compare it to a pristine web note, you'd probably be able to spot the differences. So that is also part of the reason why they went away, because they just couldn't exactly match the quality. So that would be number 9, quality on web notes. Number 8. Now with web notes, they did 3 series. Now when you talk about currency, you don't talk about the year, you talk about the series that it was done. So the first series done for web notes is this right here, 1988A. You can see that one there. Then there is 1993. And the third series that they did with web notes is the series of 1995. So those are the total series. Those are the 3 series that they had done as far as web notes go. So whenever you're hunting through singles, you're looking for 1988A, 1993. Where is it? There's 1993 and 1995. Those are your shots at finding web notes in those 3 series. So those 3 series, that would be number 8. Number 7. Now, as I stressed before, with web notes, there was no location as far as trying to discern what part of the page that a note was on. And what I mean by that, let me reach over here. Here is a regular note. Now, right here you can see it says J5. I'll move that in so you can see real good. J5 right there. That means it was in the J section, bill number 5. And it's also repeated over here, the J section as well. So I always say quadrant. Quadrant means 4, but obviously there were more than that. But anyway, in this section here, you're talking about the location of the particular note on a sheet. But on a web note, like I said before, there was no location. So if you look right here, there is nothing. There's the 1, which corresponds with Boston here. A is the first letter, so you've got A, 1, 1, A, A, 1, 1. But you have no location like we had with the other note, side by side. This one is J5, this one has no location. And that's standard with all web notes. I can just flip through all these here and you'll see none of these have a location because it was on a continuous roll of paper, so there was no location to be marked on there. So that would be number 7, location. Number 6, well, also with location, let's see. Well, no, that's it. We'll leave it at that. So no location there. Number 6. Number 6, we're talking about the quadrant. Now, with the location, once again, showing there, J5 was the specific location. But on this side, you'll notice that it has FW. This is a regular note, by the way. It has FW, which means this note was printed in Fort Worth, Texas. And then it repeats the J. That's the same J that's over here, saying that it was in the J section of notes. Well, once again, since we're talking about web notes were all printed in Washington, D.C., so there is no FW. And since there was no location on the page, you don't have that letter over here. So in this section, all you have is the small little number indicating the front plate number. And regular notes have a front plate number. This number is 64. You can see that real clear, 64. But they also have all that other information. Being a web note, all you have is the plate number, none of that other information. And like I said, these are all web notes, so as I go through them all, you can see they're just a single number on there for the different plate numbers for the front plate. So that's an easy way to identify a web note. Just seeing that tiny little number right there, that's enough to tell you, there it is. That's enough to tell you it's a web note. So that's number 6, the quadrant. Number 5, there is another identifier on web notes, and that would be the backplate. Now I'll flip that over. Once again, I'll grab my regular note, and if I look here, the regular backplate number is going to be down here on the bottom. You can see this one says 46. So there's nothing special about that because this is a regular note. But if I was to look at a web note, you'll see that in the bottom there is no plate number. The plate number is actually up on the top. This one is number 9. So yeah, that's another easy way to identify a web note. Flip it over, look at the back. Do you see a plate number down here? Nope. The plate number up here, that indicates it is a web note. And that is the case once again on all of these. You can see the plate numbers are all on top. So once again, just an easy way to identify it. Simply looking at the back plate number, that'll tell you if it's a web note. And that's number 5. Number 4, this is a little trickier. Now, this indicates what Federal Reserve it came from. And there are 12 Federal Reserves. And normally you can get notes from just about any one of the Federal Reserves in any given year. So you're going to have all 12 available for every series. Web notes, not the case. See, with web notes, they were very particular as to who was going to be doing the printing. So in 1988A, your choices are A, B, C, E, F, G. So there's A. Do I have them all? I don't even know if I've got them all. Let's see. There's A. Do I have a B? Nope, I don't have a B. There's the C, and then E, F, G. There's an E, there's an F, and there should be a G in here. Maybe, maybe. Nope, I don't even have a G. How about that? Okay, so like I said, this is just what I picked up there. So that was 1988A, has A, B, C, and then E, F, G. 1993 only has two of these, only has B and C. Those are the only two blocks that you can get. And when I say block, they're generally referring to this letter and this letter. The first letter of the serial number matches the Federal Reserve. The second letter in the serial number matches how many times they flipped all these numbers. Now, they printed the web notes. They were designated specific numbers in the middle of a print run. So you're going to see an AF block, for instance, but you're not going to necessarily see an AA block because they didn't start that way. They just inserted the numbers in the middle. So the blocks can be a little tricky, but you're going to find people, like I said, collecting from the specific Federal Reserve and the specific blocks. Now, most books are going to be able to show you what blocks those are. And in fact, I think I've got the blocks listed here. Let's take a peek. Yeah, this is, this book, Paper Money of the United States. And when we look here, series of 1988A, you can see Web Fed Press. And there we go. Boston, blocks AE, AF, AG. New York, block BL. Philadelphia, CA. And Richmond, Virginia, EI, EK. Atlanta has FL, FM, FN. FU and FV. I'm sure the FU notes are the ones that everybody's collecting. Atlanta doesn't list a specific block. Chicago has GP and GQ. So those are the blocks that are available there, and that's just from 1988A. I can flip over one page, and we can see on the top here, Web Fed Press, New York, blocks B and H, and Philadelphia, block CA. And then 1995, right here, you can see they've got Boston, ACAD, they've got New York, BH, they've got Cleveland, DC, and they've got Atlanta, FD. Those are the only blocks that are available as far as combinations go. If you're looking to collect a typeset, basically one of each one. So that is the blocks and the Federal Reserve banks. So that would be number 4. Number 3 has to do with stars. Now, even though there are so few different Federal Reserves in so few years, there is actually only one Federal Reserve and 1 year where you're going to be able to find a star. And that would be the 1988A F series. Okay. This is the only way you're ever going to find a star on a web note. 1988A F, and then where this U is, that's where they're going to have a star. That is the only star notes available, and those, they can run $800 to $1,000 because there are so few of them. So if you ever find a star note that's a web note, a web star note, you've got a nice prize there. All right, so that's number 3. Number 2 for web notes has to do with Mules. Now, I've talked about Mules in the past a couple of times. Some people get it, some people don't get it. The backs of notes are generally the same. They don't change, okay? So the backs of notes are printed en masse, and then they can separate stuff out and print the fronts of the notes to specifically designate which Federal Reserve, what the serial number is going to be, etc. Which means you can have, well, in the example of web notes, you could have a 1993, where do I have it? Do I have one? Yep, you can have a 1993 web note, like this one here, and as you are printing it, you may not go through very many of the back plates. And when you're done printing the 1993s, you could then continue to use those 1993 back plates for the 1995 series because the backs haven't changed. The backs are still the same. But what that means is you would then have a 1995 note with a 1993 back. When you have mixed plates like that, that's called a mule, because you have two things that weren't supposed to go together, but have been forced together. Kind of like when you take a horse and a donkey and breed them, now you have a mule. So that's where the term mule comes from. When the back plate and the front plate aren't supposed to go together, but they do. That's a mule. Now, I don't have a list of the mules, but my number one entry is going to help you out with that. So just be aware that there are some mules as far as web notes go. And the only other thing I have to do is tell you how to find those. And the way to do that is with my number one hint on web notes. Most of you are familiar with this site when it comes to looking up star notes. What site am I talking about? That would be mycurrencycollection.com. However, mycurrencycollection.com also has a web note lookup. And it works very similar. You can type in the year, series of 1995. Let's see if I can't get this over here. Series of 1995. I put in a number here. I put in the front plate and the back plate, and it says lookup note, so I did. And it gave me the results. Results for 1995 web note. Oh, here's the plate. It tells you the run number. That is the number of notes in that particular run. They did 200,000 sheets in this particular run. And that was one run out of at least 11, because this is run number 11 here. So that gives you an idea as to how many sheets there could have been. Generally, sheets are going to have, I wouldn't even know how they would call sheets here, because normally sheets would be 32 notes per page, per sheet. But once again, there weren't sheets with a web press note. It was just a continuous roll. Anyway, the run size was 200,000. It does give you some idea of value. These values are outdated. It even says on here that the values are from right here, 2004 pricing. So yeah, that's kind of outdated. And it does give you the range of serial numbers. So you can see 64 million to 70 million. That's only 6 million notes in this particular plate run. And then it specifically says all notes from this block are mules. So that block would be the DC block. So all DC blocks from 1995 would be considered mules. So that's how you'd find out if it was a mule or not. Now, with all of the notes in this block being a mule, no particular note's going to be worth more than another, because they are all mules. There are times when you can find notes that are mules in a regular set, but all of the notes aren't, and you have to look up specific plate numbers to find out which ones are mules. They're all mules, so there is no difference as far as that goes. So I hope that gives you guys a little better understanding on web notes. Web notes, like I said, were an experiment trying to find a way to print notes better, faster, and just didn't work out. In fact, by 1995, one of the printers had broken, and they were having problems finding parts, so they just discontinued the full experiment. So that's what I've got this week as far as web notes go. My top 10 pieces of info on web notes. I hope that helps you guys out. If you learn anything new, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe. I'll be back again next week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.